Hello, Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. I'm your host, Julian, and today we're going to be talking about the Toronto Raptors' victory over the Charlotte Hornets. But before we do that, we got to talk about the Toronto Raptors' winning ways. They are 8-2 over their past 10 games. They have been looking really good. They've been taking care of business against a lot of the weaker teams in the Eastern Conference, although there have been some quality wins in there as well. And I kind of want to talk about how the Toronto Raptors are doing this year in comparison with the rest of the East. And with the Knicks losing last night to the Heat and the Toronto Raptors winning against the Charlotte Hornets, the Toronto Raptors have moved into third in the Eastern Conference, which is, crazy, awesome, amazing. I think that a lot of Toronto Raptors fans were assuming that they would, be more around 500 at this point, and that maybe as the season progressed, they would be able to sort of build on that and get to a playoff spot. But they've looked a lot better than that. And it really does help that they're playing in the East. But it's important to point out that the two teams that are above them in the standings and below them in the standings, the Cavs above, the Hawks below, the Toronto Raptors have beaten those teams both twice. They have not lost a game against either of them. So that's a good sign. Although I will point out it's not entirely fair to the Cavs that the first time that the Toronto Raptors played against them, they were pretty hobbled by injuries. They had a bunch of their starters out. But the second one, pretty much only Garland and a couple of other players, I think Strus, and, they were a bit more healthy. So it was a quality win. The Hawks were missing Trae Young when they beat them the second time. They beat them the first time with Trae Young, and without Trae Young, they beat them. And you might think to yourself, well, that's a fake win as well. But no, the Hawks actually look better without Trae Young, which kind of pays off my theory that there's a bit of a Ewing theory thing going on with Trae Young, who is a horrendous defender and, very ball dominant. And they've looked a lot better since he's gone down. So maybe his time with the Hawks is coming to an end. In any case, let's get back to the Toronto Raptors. So after a tough opening stretch, the Toronto Raptors have really locked in, and a lot of that is because their schedule got a lot easier. So they have played the 11th easiest schedule in the league to date, and they've really capitalized. They've won 8 of their past 9 games. And, a lot of the teams in the East are going to have easier schedules because they have 3 of the worst teams in the league. So I don't think you can necessarily hold it against the Toronto Raptors. They've played bad teams and they've won against bad teams. It's not like they're treading water either. Up until the last night against the Charlotte Hornets, which was a close game, they've been putting most of the bad teams away early and winning by double digits. So not a huge concern. In terms of statistics, the Toronto Raptors have been pretty impressive as well. They're 9th in the league in net rating, which is basically you take the difference between the amount of points the Raptors score, the amount of points their opponents score, you take that chunk and then you divide it by the number of games they've played. That is the net rating, and they're 9th in that category, and that's helped a lot by the fact that they've been, running the score up a little bit against the weaker teams. They are 11th in D rating, so I mentioned that I thought that they would have a top 10 defensive rating in the next 10 games. I think we're not quite there yet, but they're trending in the right direction. They were around 14 a couple of games ago. Now they're up to 11th. They're 9th in offensive rating. No surprise there. The Toronto Raptors have looked very competent on the offensive end. And due to an easier schedule, they are 11th in SRS, which is the net rating basically combined with the strength of schedule. You combine those two together and they are 11th. So everything is looking good. They are an above average team at the very least. And I think maybe a little bit more than that, but time will tell. One thing to note about the Toronto Raptors schedule so far is that, yes, they've played against some bad teams. They've played against some good teams, but a lot of bad teams. But one of the things that you have to notice is the fact that they've played 9 of their first 14 games on the road, which is the highest, I believe, in the NBA. I think they're tied with the Golden State Warriors in that department. But that is a very encouraging sign, because one of the things that younger, sort of not as good teams tend to show is that they can't win on the road. That is a big issue, is that a lot of the time veteran teams are able to win on the road, and rookie teams and, younger teams, once they step outside of their hometown, they lose a lot of their confidence. The home crowd is a big advantage in a lot of sports, same with basketball. So, 9 of their first 14 games on the road, and they've emerged with a 9-5 record, can't be displeased with that. That is about to change. Maybe not the winning, but where they're playing. So the next 10 games, 7 of them will be at home. And they play against some quality teams there, but there are still quite a few games against some of the bottom dwellers in the Eastern Conference, so I'm looking forward to see how they perform against them. So I've said that they've had the 11th easiest schedule. They also have the 6th easiest remaining strength of schedule. So that's kind of like a little mind bending. They're tied with Detroit there, and it's not too surprising. I mean, like the East is very easy this year. Part of the good thing about being in the East is that there are the Wizards, the Pacers, and the Nets playing in that conference. And those teams are really bad. They're pretty much only winning games against themselves, like them and the Pelicans, who are also almost as bad as those teams in the Western Conference. So that's where those teams are getting wins, and they're losing to pretty much everybody else, including the Toronto Raptors. And this is not a surprise. This is not a big surprise. I said at the beginning of the season, I said the East was going to be bad, and it was going to be in flux at the top. A lot of the best teams, the Pacers, I mean, they lost Halliburton, they lost Miles Turner, they've had a whole bunch of injuries to their, role players and, secondary stars. They are not very good. The Celtics have actually been pretty decent this year, despite losing Tatum. But they're not a top dog in the conference. And then there are just a bunch of, teams in the middle. There are a lot of teams in the middle right now. And there are 3 horrendous teams. And then there's a normal bad team, which is the Charlotte Hornets, who actually kind of showed me something last night. There are wins to be had, okay? There's a lot of teams in this conference that you can beat on a night-to-night basis. There are not a ton of super teams, and if your team is built correctly, you can just go out and take those wins. As I mentioned 2 episodes ago, the Toronto Raptors don't have a ton of weaknesses in terms of the roster. They've got a lot of guys who can play. They got a lot of guys with different skill sets, and they can win the game in a variety of different ways. And that really just shows, they can win tight like they did last night. They can beat you on the boards and inside, as they showed 2 nights ago. They have a lot of different ways to win. And that is something that good teams have, and it allows them to take advantage of other teams who don't have those ingredients. There are a bunch of teams in the middle of the pack who are kind of battling for the top spots in the Eastern Conference. And while I don't know how much daylight exists between these middling teams, it's hard to put them into a tier. It's hard to put them into a tier right now. There's only really one team that's kind of separated themselves from the rest of the pack, and that's the Detroit Pistons, which is a bit of a surprise. I mean, they look really good. They are 12-2. They've won 10 in a row. They are just, kind of head and shoulders above the rest. But then the rest of the rest of the Eastern Conference is pretty neck and neck. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 10-5, then followed by the Raptors, 9-5, who are, tied with Atlanta in terms of record. But of course, the Raptors have beaten Atlanta twice, so they're ahead of them in the standings. But the projected top dogs, like the New York Knicks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Magic, they're either banged up or struggling. The Cavs have managed to, stay in the top 2, but they were projected to be kind of the runaway favorites in the East this year, and they've looked a little bit more pedestrian than that, and that's pretty much due to the fact that they're not entirely healthy. The Magic, on the other hand, they were supposed to be like the up-and-coming kind of surprise team in the Eastern Conference that was going to be one of the top teams, and they've struggled, so they're worth keeping an eye on. What I want to see, so something that I haven't really seen to this point, is kind of how the middle teams in the Eastern Conference are going to duke it out. So the Celtics are 500. They have a really good advanced statistics. They're actually ahead of the Toronto Raptors in terms of net rating, in terms of SRS. They've had a harder schedule. They've also been on the road quite a bit, but they are around 500. I want to see how the Raptors match up against them. The Magic, kind of in a similar boat. They are a little worse in terms of the advanced statistics, but they're also 500. I want to see the Raptors play against them, see how they do. The Bulls faded after a really strong start to the season, and they're now just a little bit above 500. They're obviously a team that the Toronto Raptors need to match up against, find their level against. And then finally, the Heat, who are also a very surprising team. The Raptors haven't played against them either. I just need to see a little bit more. The Toronto Raptors haven't really faced enough of the middle of the Eastern Conference for me to get a bearing on where they are in relationship with that group. I don't need the Raptors to win 100% of those games. That's just kind of, wishful thinking. I think the Raptors are going to win some games against those teams. I think they're going to lose some games against those teams. But what I'd like to see is for them to be above 500 or around 500. I want to be able to see, like, because those teams play against the Pacers, the Nets, and the Wizards. They play against those teams too. So there's going to be a bunch of teams with kind of inflated records who are sitting around or over 500 that need to kind of have that internal competition between them in order to see how things shake out. It's going to come down to like who can separate themselves from the rest of the pack in the middle, or just at least be able to show that they can hang with them. Maybe you're going to have a good matchup against one of the other teams in that group, like the Toronto Raptors have beaten Cleveland and Atlanta twice, but maybe they'll struggle against the Orlando Magic. Maybe they'll be good against the Bulls, but maybe they'll struggle against the Heat. It's really going to come down to where they're going to be able to get their wins. And I am very surprised, very happy with where the Raptors are sitting right now. They're going to get another test in their upcoming game, playing against the only team that was able to beat them the past 9 games, and that is the Philadelphia 76ers. So, and that's again in Philadelphia. So we'll have to see how they fare against them. In any case, I kind of just wanted to take a look at the Toronto Raptors, where they're sitting right now, because I obviously am very surprised, very happy with where they are right now. But I wanted to take a look at the East in general and give you guys an idea of what the upcoming schedule is like. Just kind of give you an overview of a very pleasant and very happy start to the season for the Toronto Raptors. With that out of the way, why don't we get into the player evaluations, because there was like a very exciting game last night between the Toronto Raptors and the Charlotte Hornets. And why don't we get into the player evaluations there? We'll talk about what I saw from them. So starting off the list here with the best performance of the night, clearly Brandon Ingram was the Toronto Raptors' best player last night. He had a number of, highlight reel. Highlight reel is kind of underselling it. These were like career highlight reel plays that he had. So he posterized Ryan Kalkbrenner, who is like a good, solid, like upperclassman rookie that the Hornets drafted and has been playing solid minutes for them at the center position. So this guy isn't a stiff. And Ingram just had like his way with him. On the first play of the game, Pirtle set a screen and then another screen, so what's known as a Gortat screen, where you screen at the rim and stop the center from adequately challenging, and Brandon Ingram managed to yam it on him. Then later in the game, Brandon Ingram just basically got a clear path drive to the basket, and Kalkbrenner was waiting for him at the rim, but man, Brandon Ingram found another level, just kind of leaped up and crammed it over top of Kalkbrenner. It was like one of the best dunks of his career. It was sick over a true 7-foot center and just brought the house down. Everybody went nuts on the bench. I loved that one. And then probably like the most impactful moment of the night, one of at least, there was another one a little later in the game, but he kind of saved the Toronto Raptors at the end of the game too, when Ryan Kalkbrenner got into the paint and was looking like he was going to slam it. And again, Brandon Ingram rose up and smacked the ball, pinning it on the glass, almost wedgied the ball by blocking Ryan Kalkbrenner at the rim. What a night for him. And then on offense, he was 9 of 21 from the field for 27 points. And hallelujah, his 3-point shot he was making those shots last night. He was 3 of 6 from 3. He was 6 of 7 from the free throw stripe. He was one of the only people that could consistently get to the line. More on that later, but yeah, he got to the line too. He had 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks, and 5 turnovers. So the 5 turnovers, he does have a little bit of an issue turning the ball over. And while I thought his defense was like awesome, like he is like just a good rim protector. Like I am surprised, like he's kind of playing like a big, and I am really happy with what he's doing in the paint. 3 blocks, 2 steals, that's 5 stocks. That is insane. With that said, like I really do like what he does on help defense, like moving around in the paint and helping out and getting his hand on loose balls. Like one of the things he does really well is when they try and pass it back out or make a post entry feed, he can kind of swat the ball away with his length. He's just so long, and on the inside, that is like half the battle. Like you don't have to be, a superstar athlete in order to get blocks. You just have to put your hand up, put your hand out a lot of the time. That's how we got 2 of the steals, just kind of grabbing balls as they were being passed into the paint. He's just a solid interior defender. I will note, like, okay, so like he was definitely the best player of the game, but there were a couple of concerns, like he just, sometimes it looks like he takes plays off, like he's just kind of walking around, or some of the time, like they'll put up a shot and he just kind of looks at the basket and gets ready to rebound. Like, I'd like to see him, like, in the playoffs or in, like, high leverage situations, like, I think he locks in a little bit more, but some of the plays, like, you can tell he's not as engaged, but it's okay. He was really good on offense. He was really good on defense. He was the player of the game. Just loved what I saw from him. Next up, we'll go to Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes had the ultimate block, so Brandon Ingram had the penultimate block, the second to last block of the game. And then Scotty Barnes had the ultimate block, the final block. He blocked it out of bounds with zeros on the clock. So it was a game-saving block because the Raptors were ahead at that point. It was, a really good floor game. Scotty Barnes had 16 points on 8 of 16 shooting. He was 0 of 1 from 3. And here's the big thing. He was 0 of 0 from the line, okay? And he was fouled multiple times in this game with no whistle. I was shocked by how lopsided the refereeing was in this game. I'll mention it here because it's Scotty was the main guy that should have gone to the line more often. The Charlotte Hornets shot 30 free throws. The Raptors shot 16, so pretty much half of what the Hornets shot. And yes, the Raptors foul a lot. That is one of the things about their defense, is that they're really active and they try and get up into you, and that's going to result in fouls. It was not, like, if you watch the game, that was not the case. There were a bunch of, they were letting the Hornets play kind of aggressively and physically on defense under the basket against the Raptors, and then the Raptors were getting called for touch fouls on the other end. And Scotty Barnes was attacking the paint. 16 shots, a lot of them were on drives. Tons of them were through contact, like he was getting pushed, he was getting bumped, he was getting smacked. No calls, no fouls, no free throws. I was just kind of sickened by that. His 6 rebounds, like he had 3 offensive rebounds, 3 defensive rebounds. That's really good. 6 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks, 1 turnover. I thought it was just another really strong performance from Scotty Barnes. I thought his defense was excellent. Like, obviously the 3 stocks are good, but the guy is just kind of all over the place. There was one really good possession, like where he was defending the inbounds and LaMelo Ball was like trapped in the corner and Scotty was just jumping like as high as he could, waving his arms. He basically forced LaMelo to like throw a huge high lob that was then picked off. So great job by Scotty Barnes. Like, and the rest of the defense was great. There were a couple of issues, like most of the issues he runs into are when he's guarding the perimeter. But other than that, he was just fantastic in this game and really should have gone to the line more, gotten some free throws, probably should have had 20 points, but he just did not get rewarded by the referees. But I still think it was a great game. After that, gonna give it to Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl, like, he is just such a solid player. 13 points on 6 of 7 shooting, so only missed 1 shot. And he was 1 of 2 from the line, 9 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 turnover. And the big thing is that in this game, his main job, I feel, was keeping Ryan Kalkbrenner kind of off the boards and under control. So Ryan Kalkbrenner had 7 points on 2 of 3 shooting, so he was not getting many good looks in the paint. A lot of that was due to Jakob Poeltl, and he only had 1 offensive rebound. So that was really impactful because Ryan Kalkbrenner is massive. Like, he is a huge guy, and Jakob Poeltl was pushing him under the basket. He was tying him up. He had a bunch of screen assists in this game where he was just kind of either pinning Kalkbrenner under the basket or setting like a huge screen that got people into the paint. Like, he is so important for the Toronto Raptors, and he had another just really solid game. He is a stabilizing force for the Raptors, and he wasn't as good as Scotty or Brandon Ingram, but he brings it almost every night. I loved what I saw from him. After that, we'll give it to Emmanuel Quickley, who I think had a good game. 15 points on 11 shots, 3 of 8 from 3. That is totally fine. 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 3 turnovers. The defense was a bit of an issue. There are some issues he has guarding players. So he was involved, like it was him and RJ guarding Con Knipple. And Con Knipple got a lot of his shot attempts off of broken plays where it wasn't necessarily that he wasn't being guarded by one player or another, but he was left open. But I felt like Immanuel Quickley was having a tough time guarding the pick and roll. I think there were some issues where he was at a position. He's still, a smaller guy. It's hard to match him up against some of the bigger players like Con Knipple. But he did do a lot of stuff, like he did flop on the screen and got called for it, like kind of did a Davion Mitchell / Jamal Shed special where he ran hard around the screen and flopped on it and drew the offensive foul. And then the 2 steals were good, that just being in the right position and getting the ball. I thought it was a really good game from him on the offensive end. He's really kind of figured out, like, again, so much of his offensive game is around him being able to make shots. And he was able to make shots. Like he pulls up in transition and hits those shots. I love that shot for him. He was, catch and shoot again. He was making his shots there too. 3 of 8, it's not perfect, but yeah, it's 37.5%. You're going to take that pretty much every night almost. I thought it was a good night in that respect. And another thing that I liked was that he seems to have that floater back. He had a really good pick and roll possession where he just came off of the screen and hit the floater. I love to see that. So I think a pretty solid night at the office from Immanuel Quickley. Last and not least, but certainly not a great game from RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett had 16 points on 16 shots. He was 1 of 4 from 3, 1 of 3 from the free throw line. So yeah, I mean, he's kind of back to missing a lot of free throws, and that is bad. That's not good. And he had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and a turnover. His defense was not good this game. And it was kind of atypical for him. So one of the things that he does is that sometimes he'll leave the perimeter open. That wasn't necessarily his problem this game. His problem this game was that guys were driving on him and scoring. So Con had a couple of plays where he drove into the paint past RJ Barrett and scored. He had a bunch of possessions where Colin Sexton drove past him and scored. So it was not a good night from him keeping players in front of him. And then on offense, he missed way too many open layups. I don't expect to see that very often, but I'd like to see him make those kinds of shots because he is a good player in transition. He will get a lot of those opportunities, but he's got to make them more often. He has been in a bit of a swoon the past 5 games. I'd say the past 5 games he has had pretty disappointing performances, and this was another one. I think that he was probably the worst of the starters, although it wasn't like this was not a nightmarish game, just not a great one. Off the bench, man, he has been picking it up. Grady Dick was the best player off of the bench. He had 10 points on 3 of 5 shooting. He was 2 of 3 from 3, and one of the threes that he hit came off of a bit of motion. It wasn't like he was sprinting to get to the spot, but he had to relocate, catch the ball, and shoot. He made the shot. 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 1 rebound, which is surprising to me because I felt like he had more than that, but he is physical and he is tapping the ball to players and doing stuff, so maybe he didn't get credited for them. He had 2 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers, but his activity level was good. He is flying around on the court. There were a couple of possessions, like there was one possession where he left Con Knipple open and Con Knipple hit the 3. But outside of that, like he did have a good man-to-man possession against Knipple where he used his hands to kind of bat the ball off of Knipple, made him turn it over. I thought it was a really good night from him. And then on offense, he's driving with the ball. He had a couple of really nice assists where he'd get into the paint and pass it back out again. Just an overall a good game. And then on defense, like, yeah, this is like, he is very poor in one area, but he kind of makes up for it with activity and his active hands and stuff like that. And the Hornets weren't really able to capitalize on that. And he's just showing me some stuff. He had a good game. He was +6 on the game when the rest of the bench kind of struggled. Next up, we'll go to, I think, Jamal Shed. Jamal Shed had like not a great scoring night. He had 2 points on 2 shots. He was 0 of 1 from 3. But again, he did have 4 assists. He had 2 steals, a block because he came over and provided help. I don't know if that was the block or whether he was credited for a steal, but there was a low post catch and he came over, kind of ripped it away. He did have 3 turnovers, so not a great offensive night. He left a lot to be desired in terms of scoring, but the assists were nice, and then the defense was also pretty good. But yeah, I think the bench as a whole struggled. So even though he was second in terms of the players off of the bench, I think it was more just because the rest of the bench kind of stunk other than Grady Dick. So yeah, not a great night for him, but he obviously he's shown me a lot more in his other stints. So yeah, I hope he can bounce back on offense. And again, I got a note again, he drew another offensive foul off of a screen. So he's doing that, as I mentioned, like pretty much once a game. Next up, we'll go to Sandro Mamukelashvili. He had 7 points on 7 shots. He was 1 of 2 from 3, which is pretty good. He had 4 rebounds. He had a nice block on a LaMelo Ball and 1 turnover. But I feel like he lost the matchup to Moussa Diabate, who was really good off of the bench for the Charlotte Hornets. Diabate had like a really nice spinning post move where he dunked it on Mamu, and then he blocked Mamu on the other end, like just a clean block under the rim. Mamu didn't have like a terrible night, but he had some issues on defense, and he wasn't very effective from the field. He didn't score very well this game. The rebounds were okay, but I feel like the bench had troubles rebounding with him on the court. The Hornets out-rebounded the Raptors last night. I think a lot of that came up from the bench unit. And just kind of an uninspiring game from him. He's had a lot better than this. Next up, we'll talk about Colin Murray-Boyles, who I think just had like a rookie bad game. He wasn't very effective on offense. He only had 4 points on 3 shots. He was, again, kind of underwhelming on the board, so that's a little bit of a concern. He had only 1 rebound in this game, and he had a nice assist, but I just didn't see a ton from him this game. He traveled, the refs were really stingy this game with calls, so he got called for a travel, and just generally just wasn't impactful. Didn't have a ton of, his defense, he made a couple of rookie mistakes, like where he was, doubling at the wrong time. I think he doubled off of LaMelo Ball at a crucial point when he made a big shot. I mean, he does do stuff under the rim and help out, and he has good foot speed, but he just wasn't impactful this game. And this was one of his worst games in his rookie season, which is going to happen. And Jacoby Walter played, but only 3 minutes, didn't really do anything, kind of an underwhelming night from him. So we'll just get right to the final thoughts. So the first thing that I have to mention off of here, I'll get on my soapbox. I mentioned it already. The refs were just very bad this game. And I usually don't mention the refs. Like if you watch these videos, I usually don't even mention the refs because most of the time, the reffing in the NBA is pretty good. I obviously will get flustered if they miss a call or something, but they're human and they can make some mistakes. And usually it goes both ways. It's not, one team getting all of the calls and the other team not getting all of the calls. So, and this is true even though the Raptors do foul a lot. The Raptors are one of the most fouling teams, and I understand that, and I've come to terms with that. Like, they're going to get more foul calls against them. This game was completely different. The whistle was not being applied fairly on both ends. The Raptors were getting called for weak calls under their basket, touch fouls, like regular kind of bump and grind stuff under the basket. They were getting calls on. They were getting called on, getting foul calls. On the other end, when they would get into the paint, the refs were not calling those same touch and bump fouls for the Toronto Raptors when they got inside. So that, first of all, get that out of the way. I think I would have been like absolutely apoplectic if the Raptors lost this game because I think they outplayed the Hornets for the majority of the game. And one of the reasons it was so close was that free throw differential. Let's get that out of the way. The other thing is that the Hornets are not that bad. They are not the Pacers. They are not the Wizards. They are not the Nets. They are like in a tier above those teams. Con Knipple is a really good player. Like you can just tell the guy knows how to play the game. He can shoot. He can make plays. He had his hand on a bunch of loose balls. He struggled with some turnovers, but a lot of that was the way that the Raptors were kind of playing with him. But he was decent on defense. They were trying to attack him, and they had mixed success with that. The refs were kind of letting him get away with some fouls, which I don't know why. Like, the Raptors are the veteran team. They should be getting the calls. You think they're at home. But they didn't really. But he was a good player. The LaMelo Ball turned it on late. Colin Sexton was pretty good in this game. They've got some players. They can play defense. They are not that bad. I gained some respect for them. I think that they, are not as bad as their record indicates. So I thought this was a frustrating win. They looked like they were playing against the refs for quite a bit of this game, and the Hornets were, playing some tough basketball. You got to give them credit. So this was not a walkover. This was a close game, but the Raptors managed to kind of squeak it out at the end with some big plays. It wasn't just that they were making shots. They played really good defense at the end of the game, and they just did enough to win. And I got to give RJ a shout out because I listed him as the worst Raptor, but he did score the winning basket. And it was off of another really good kind of pin down screen by Jakob Poeltl where he sort of trapped Kalkbrenner under the basket, and Brandon Ingram made a nice pass to RJ, who streaked in and scored. So, he kind of made up for it at the end there. In any case, the Toronto Raptors, they go back out onto the road against the Philadelphia 76ers. It's a one-game road trip. They will be playing against the Sixers tomorrow at 7 o'clock. So that should be an interesting test. Of course, they got kind of their asses handed to them the last time they played in Philly. They showed some heart there. Can't be too upset with the way they played that game, but Philly was just kind of on another level. With that said, the Raptors were missing Jakob Poeltl, who's obviously very important against that team. Obviously Joel Embiid and Trendon Watford, who's kind of like an undersized energy big. Those guys, Jakob Poeltl is going to be instrumental against, so maybe it'll be a different outcome. I'd like to see them play the Sixers hard in their building, and if they don't get the win, I'd like to see like more of a competitive game, a closer game, a game where they are able to tax the Sixers. In any case, that is the episode. Hope you enjoyed. We have a podcast tonight, so please join me and Steve on the podcast on Tuesday here at 8:30. We'd like to have you there. Also, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That really helps the algorithm know that this is content other Raptors fans want to watch. Hit the bell icon so that you know when new videos go live, and join the Discord. We have a lot of Raptors fans there talking Raptors basketball. We'd like to have you join us. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.